So, first things first. Let's just get this out of the way right off the bat. If you loved Resident Evil Village, what are you doing? Clearly, you'd more than likely love this. For everyone else, it really comes down to how much you enjoyed Resident Evil Village, because it's mostly more of the same thing. At the end of this, I'll give my verdict on if I felt it was worth it in my personal opinion, whether it added anything a Resident Evil fan should care about, or did it just add fluff to Resident Evil Village and not really be of value to your time. We're going to get this done within a quick time frame because that's really all the time we need to go over this DLC, as it's not that long, only averaged out to about 2 to 3 hours depending how fast you go. Shadows of Rose is the newly released DLC for the base game of Resident Evil Village. It costs a little bit of money, but it also includes additional content not covered in this video because we really only care about the story DLC. But if you do care, it also includes additional content and playable characters for the Mercenaries mode, and on top of that, a third-person perspective mode for the base game. Moving on. Shadows of Rose takes place after the end of the base game. Fast forward 20 years roughly for when baby Rose is now college-aged Rose. Rose has Megamycete powers and wants to get rid of them because everyone has been calling her a freak at school and she has no friends, blaming her own powers. Now her agent buddy she knows through Chris and his Houndwolf squad tells her there's a way to remove those powers with a purifying crystal if she so desires. If you haven't been listening, well, yeah, that's what she wants to do. He takes her to this leftover piece of Megamycete, tells her to try and use her powers to connect with it and go into this Inception-like dream world. Well, after doing so first try, of course, the dream world is back to where it all began in the base game's castle. But now things are run by what seems like our merchant from the game. But now he has a persona mask, making him evil, I guess. We soon discover the merchant is killing off clones of Rose, but there's a nice crystal that apparently can take away her powers right in front of her. So, let's go get it. And there's your premise for the game. Now that I massacred the synopsis, how's the gameplay and narrative? Is this a journey worth going through? Well, firstly, I'll tell you on my first try, I clocked in just under 3 hours. That included some dumb deaths and replaying of parts that weren't quite clear enough when first attempting them. But again, maybe that's just me, and maybe you will be more efficient. So, depending on the price that you see listed, we may have already established if 3 hours of content expanding the base game's narrative is already worth your time. If what I've said so far is enough to go off of, there you have it. If you still aren't convinced one way or another, let's continue. Now, we haven't really gotten into the gameplay much yet. As you may know, the base game was created in the first-person perspective, and now the DLC adds third-person perspective. Sadly, we are stuck in third-person for the entire DLC, giving no option for the base game's original default of first-person perspective. Does that make any sense to anyone? It sure as hell doesn't. We do have a lot of slime and ooze to experience, kind of like the castle has been gooped with Ghostbuster evil goo. Does that matter? Yes, it does, because you'll get powers that allow you to disintegrate the goo that blocks your passageways. So, instead of just repeating a playthrough of the base game's areas exactly in the same fashion, we have a gooped up version of it. I thought at first it made it interesting, but really it's just the same thing with a tweak of the same environments you saw in the base game. We'll call that a wash. didn't really feel that special. It more so ended up feeling like I'm doing the base game again, but with a new character this time. Thing is, it's not the entire base game, it's really just the beginning areas, roughly the first third to half of the base game, not necessarily in the same order as the base game though. You may have noticed and seen some new enemy types from the trailers. This DLC gets entirely new enemies, apart from those that are seen in the base game. One is a ghoul that acts in the same fashion as a zombie, can't run, but can walk fast if it spots you. These are commonplace in most of what you'll see throughout all of it. Then we have another that's a mini-boss enemy. Seems intimidating at first due to his size, but then you'll get over it pretty quickly after receiving the shotgun. There's slightly more than that. I won't spoil the story for you, but did the narrative feel like it added value or do anything for Resident Evil's lore overall?
Who's this? Oh, now we have a new little rabbit to pursue. Let's see how fast this one is. Find her! Hunt her down!
If you want to see what Rose is like in the future, and what she thinks of her, at this point, long deceased father, and that narrative is it, then by all means, this is for you. Does the DLC extend lore of Resident Evil overall though? Not really, no. Keep in mind, this is basically a dream world, and it's like going through a nightmare. After you wake up,
Oh my God, Rose.
does it matter? Well, you'll have to find out if you care enough to go through it. After all is said and done, did the gameplay, the narrative, the lore, or anything and everything I experienced feel like this DLC added more value to the base game? Slightly. It's more content of Resident Evil Village. That's an okay thing. I'd personally rather have a director's cut of the Resident Evil 3 remake, but since that's a different game and does not matter here, it's a solid meh for me. Mid, if you will. It really does come down to, did you like Resident Evil Village? Because you're basically going through it again, but with Rose this time. I thought a brand new environment, or at least partially a new environment, could have made this a lot better. If I had known it was just a retextured and repurposed base game with new cutscenes, I'd probably have skipped it. So, there you have it. Liked Resident Evil Village, want more content for it, then buy it. If you didn't like it much, or was okay, or a skip for you, just wait for Resident Evil 9. Will you miss anything if you skip this and go straight to Resident Evil 9 when it comes out? I doubt it. Sure, technically, at the lowest, faintest level, you will miss the smallest of details, but as far as the larger picture and overall scope of Resident Evil lore, which is pretty muddled up anyways as is, no, you're not really missing much. And for those of you that did end up getting it, what did you think of the DLC? And as always, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Hittobox.